Right, welcome at this week's discussion of the Parashah. Now, this week's Parashah is the Parashah Mikeitz. And Parashah Mikeitz then is in Genesis chapter 41 verse 1 to chapter 44 verse 17. So let's just first speak about what we read about in this portion. In this portion, we now read about how Joseph's imprisonment, his slavery, is now ended. You remember in the previous week's parashah, we spoke about how his brothers actually sold him and he then went to Egypt. And there in Egypt, he became a slave in the house of Potiphar. So last week's parashah was all about dreams, visions, how we interpret those visions and how we need to be careful, because the problem is never with what we hear that God says, but how we interpret it in our lives. And if you are a visionary, this is extremely important. Or if you feel that God has called you in the prophetic, this is extremely important that you and I will not just receive a dream and then interpret it according to what we believe it should be. But now, this week, we see how Joseph now comes out of the prison, and how this is also, again, about a vision. Pharaoh has a dream about the 7 fat cows that swallows up the 7 lean cows. He also has another dream, and the other dream is about how these fat ears of grain swallows up the 7 lean ears of grain. And then Joseph interprets these dreams correctly, and he tells the Pharaoh that there's going to be 7 good years, and then there will be 7 very bad years, or years of hunger and famine. And then he tells Pharaoh that what he needs to do is he needs to find a wise man that can help him to administer this, because in the 7 years that they have plenty, they should store up this so that when there's going to be a time of famine, that they will have enough to eat. Pharaoh then appoints Joseph as governor of Egypt, or the viceroy, like a prime minister of Egypt, and that the only one that is of a higher authority than this is now Pharaoh, would be Joseph. Joseph then gets married to this girl who's the daughter of apparently of Potiphar. It seems like he's coming full circle. When we look at rabbinical interpretations, it seems like this is the daughter of Potiphar, but whether or not, he has 2 sons called Manasseh and Ephraim from this marriage, which is something which we will deal with in another parashah in the near future. Then we see how famine comes to the region. We see how that people only can get food if they come to Egypt, and how among the people that come to Egypt for food, we also see Joseph's brothers. Now, interestingly enough, Joseph's brothers doesn't recognize Joseph, because Joseph is now clothed in Egyptian array. He looks like an Egyptian. He's acting in that way, and then when they come to purchase grain, the younger brother, Benjamin, stays home. Now, the reason why is because Jacob now fears that something might happen to Benjamin, because he's already now in his mind lost Joseph, doesn't have Joseph anymore, and he doesn't want this to happen to his youngest son, Benjamin, which are the only 2 sons which he had from Rachel, the real wife he loved. So then when they come around, Joseph asks them about their family, as if he's interested about who they are, where they come from. Asks them about, is their father alive still? He finds out about the family. Then he says that they can only come back if they are going to bring Benjamin along with them. And then he keeps Simeon, almost like a hostage. Now, very interesting that he keeps Simeon, because the two brothers that we've seen in the last couple of parashot, which are really these guys who have a problem with being the ones who would go out and kill, like, at Shechem we see them doing this, him and Levi. It seems like they were the two who wanted to kill him. And it seems like these guys have got this fighting spirit inside of them. And so Joseph takes this Simeon now as a hostage. He keeps him there, and then they go back. They find the money in their bags, and lo and behold, whatever they've purchased for, the money is back. Then, when they get back to Jacob, they tell him about everything. And Jacob, in the beginning, does not want to send Benjamin. But then Judah, this is very interesting. Judah says to Benjamin, to Jacob, that he will exchange his own life for Benjamin. And he will really take care of him, and he will take full responsibility for him. Jacob then agrees. They go back. They buy food again. And then Joseph had his goblet, his silver goblet, put into the bag of Benjamin, because he's setting them up now. He would like to see the intentions of the heart of the brothers. He then, after they've had this dinner with them, sent them back, and then he had his men go after them. They opened the bags, and here's the goblet in Benjamin's bag. They bring them back, and now he's really testing the intentions of their hearts, and he's saying, guys, Benjamin has stolen this, and he's prepared to set them all free except for Benjamin. He says, I want to keep Benjamin here as my slave. And so in this parasha, we see in the beginning of the parasha, we see how Joseph himself is being set free. We come to the end of the parasha, and we see how Joseph now tells the brothers, I'm setting you guys free, but Benjamin I'm keeping. So in a sense, there is this thing about being able to set people free from imprisonment. And the theme of this parasha is then being set free from imprisonment. This being set free from imprisonment has to do with vision. It has to do with what is it that you see. Do you see what God wants to do or not? And I want to say, I really and truly believe that a lot of people are in a prison of their own mindset. They're in a prison because of what they see. And they constantly see problems. They constantly are focused upon that which they have right in front of them. We have a group of people here with us, sharing with us during this time of Chanukah. And today we actually went to Bethel. We went into Bethel from Bethel to Shiloh, from Shiloh to Ariel, where you have Mount of Blessings, Mount of Cursings next to it. And so we stood there on top of the water tower at Bethel, and I spoke to them about the fact that when God spoke to Abraham, Abraham came, he didn't know where he was going, he just went. Because God said, go out of your land, go out of your people, and go to the country which I will show you. Then when he gets to that country, God shows him something close to Bethel. He shows him on that mountain the land that he wants to give him. But he tells him these words. He says, look from the place where you are standing. He's not saying look at the place where you are standing. Because it's when we are able to look beyond our circumstances and see the purposes and plans of God, that is the thing that sets us free from the imprisonment of looking at our circumstances and the hopelessness of our situations that we perceive from that which our situation tells us. You know, your circumstances has a voice, and it speaks. It speaks to you, and it speaks to me. My circumstances will tell me, you know, this is the resources you have. This is your abilities. This is your opportunities. This is what you can get in the natural. But when Joseph was able to look beyond the natural and see what God says, it brought him freedom. Likewise, it'll bring us freedom when we can see beyond that which is in the natural. At the end of the parasha, we see how the brothers are now imprisoned because they look at the natural. They see a silver goblet. They see trouble. They see this man in Egypt that now wants to hold them captive. And then they see a hopeless situation. They don't know what the answer will be to this. They don't know how this will work out. There is no hope for them. There is no defense for them. Because they are looking at the natural. They are looking at what is in front of them. And so the main idea of this parasha is about being able to look beyond your circumstances. Joseph is in a prison in which there is no hope for him. Nothing. You know, in the natural, there's no hope. But there is hope when you can see beyond the natural. When he is able to discern what God is saying. And when he comes up with that wisdom, then there is a freedom. And I want to say today that the biggest freedom that you and I can ever be in is the freedom of looking beyond our circumstances. It's the freedom of seeing the plan of God and not be captured by our own inabilities, not be captured by that which is in the natural. You know, we can so quickly in the natural be captured by what we see. We can so quickly become imprisoned to our own thoughts, to the things which will just run wild in your mind. It was such a blessing. This afternoon we ended our day by going to some people in Ariel where their youngest son was in a terror attack. They received, this was now in 2008, that they received this basket, and it was over the time of Purim, and the boy thought that this was a gift that was sent to them by somebody. You know, it's a custom around here to give gifts. And to to then hear how when he opened it up, it exploded and just rocketed him away from the table where he was. And he was found meters away from where the bomb exploded. And how when he was taken to hospital, the doctors actually gave the mother and father and the brothers and the sister no hope, nothing. But that a mother and father that night, and there was an operation, and the mother told us this story today. There was an operation of 8 hours, and even after the operation, the doctors came and said, "Look, guys, there is actually no hope. We don't want to give you false hope. We'll have to see. We'll have to go through the night." And this mother and this father and the brothers and the sister did something. They looked beyond the circumstances. And they saw what God wanted to do. They saw that they had to forgive whoever planted the bomb. And they told us today of how they had to work through this in their own minds. They had to go beyond their emotions. They had to be in a place where they had to come to peace with what God was saying. And then God gave them a word. That night they felt that God said, He will live. And God will be glorified in this. Beyond the natural, beyond what they could see, they had to take hold of what God says. And I want to say this today. If we are able to grasp what God wants, and we are able to look beyond that which is the natural, then we will be able to see miracles. Miracles which is much bigger, much greater than that which we can see in the here and the now. You know, in Romans chapter 4 it says that Abraham hoped against hope. Your circumstances and my circumstances give us a certain hope. But that hope is actually a despair. But then there is the hope of what God says. And if we are willing to say, I choose that which God says. I choose to do that which He says and to order my life according to that. Then we see miracles. And I pray that during this time of Chanukah, this time of the Festival of the Lights, where that oil that was just supposed to burn for one day, burned for 8 days, that it will be for us also a time of seeing beyond the natural, seeing what is in the heavenlies, seeing what God wants for us. And then, when we act upon that, to be set free from imprisonment. Before your circumstances and my circumstances can change in the natural, we first have to be set free in our mindset. Not to look at our circumstances, but to look beyond our circumstances to that which God is saying to us. I want to bless you today with that. And when you read through the Parashah further on in this week, keep that in mind. Keep it in mind that God wants us to look beyond our circumstances. That God wants us to be set free in this paradigm that we have, to know that the final answers are not in that which we can see and hear and taste and feel and smell, but really it is in what God says, the vision that He has for our lives. May God bless you in this week as you continue to study and read His Word.